Poetics, where poetry meets the voice. I'm Tamara Rockwood. I'm coming to you from Bainbridge Island. This is episode 44, and today's question is, what is your body keeping that you don't have language for yet? So stay with me. Your hands remember the piano you stopped playing. Your knees still know the exact pitch of your grandmother's porch stairs. The smell of a hospital corridor finds you in the grocery aisle. Muscle memory isn't a workout app. It is the secret card catalog that the body keeps when the brain decides certain files need to go into long-term storage. Today's poet has built an entire collection around that catalog. Tim Mayo's Muscle Memories of Love and Disaster. Mayo worked 15 years inside of a psychiatric ward. He survived a bicycle accident severe enough to require a tracheostomy, and he wrote his way out of it. He has tragically buried more people than most of us have read about. And the book that came out of all of this somehow is also funny and tender. Also a love letter to a woman who we will meet. It's a fascinating book. I am so grateful that we were able to publish it, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to discuss it with you. So, when we're not recording, my husband Ben and I run Bainbridge Island Press, where we publish poetry, and books like this one are why we do it. Poetry that doesn't ask you to look away from the inventory. So wherever you're listening, however you came to be here today, pour something nice, have some tea. Welcome to Poetics. So let's get started with the title. The title of this book comes from a poem inside of the book called Meditation on Your Final Moment. And Mayo wrote it for the New Hampshire poet Patricia Fargnoli. And she mentored him for years as she lay dying in early 2021. Here are some of the lines that gave the book its name. Yet I think of you, now, only you and not myself, my own less pain-racked body aching in the dark with its muscle memories of love and disaster. That's the title. Now let me place the poet. Tim Mayo is from Vermont. He has a degree from Harvard, and he has an MFA from Bennington. He has two previous full-length poetry collections. One is The Kingdom of Possibilities in 2009, and The Thesaurus of Separation in 2016. He is a 10-time Pushcart nominee and 15 years working at the Battleboro Retreat, the mental institution there, as a mental health worker and a teacher in hospital school. The biographical detail is not just trivia. This is a poet whose ear is trained on long night shifts of other people's crises. And that matters for what comes next. So I want to talk about what the book actually does. What is this book? Let me give you the architecture. There are four people dedicated to this book, and three of them have passed on. One is alive. Patricia Fargnoli, who died in 2021, Mayo's daughter, who died in 2023, Amelia Hancock, who died in 2013, and then Betsy, his muse, who is, in his words, very much alive. The whole book follows this arithmetic, and Mayo gathers four streams of material and braids them together. So first, elegies. for his poet friends, for his family, the poems at the Chemo Clinic, about his daughter, A Father's Lament, A Candle For. Then second, a sequence reconstructed from a catastrophic bicycle accident in which he sustained neck and nerve injuries. So those poems are The Sunshine, A Different Color of Sun, Self-Portrait with Trache, and The Why Answers. The third architecture is poems set inside the locked psychiatric ward where he worked. So some of those poems are Fugue, Fairy Tale for a Young Inpatient, A Brief Explanation of the Psychotic Universe, and The March Hare. And then finally, the fourth is a quiet thread of love poems to Betsy that hold the book's pulse together. The collection's logic is not chronological. It is muscular. It is the body remembering what the brain has tried to file away. It's beautiful. I love it so much. I love this book so much. So, what I want to do before we read some of the poems is understand why this poetry is important. Why this poetry? What catharsis actually means. I've written about this on my Substack, and I've spoken about it in presentations. But I want to take a step back and just ask why a book like this one matters at all, beyond the achievement of any individual poem. And the honest answer requires going back to Aristotle, because the Poetics is still the document that explains what books like this are doing for us. So Aristotle's word is catharsis. We translate it as catharsis with a C. But the popular sense of that word has flattened to, as it typically does in translations, to emotional release. As if a sad poem were a passing wind. That's not what I meant to say. I meant the wind passing. That's what I meant to say. But the Greek is more interesting. The three readings have been argued over, or for centuries. Purgation, which is medical, it's a Renaissance reading. Purification, the religious reading, the cleansing of pity and fear. And clarification, the intellectual reading, argued more recently by some writers that I don't have their titles in front of me, but Stephen Hallowell has written about this. And that tragedy clarifies is the one that holds up best for serious contemporary work, in that catharsis is not the discharge of feeling. It is the moment when feeling becomes legible to the person carrying it. Mayo's book is necessary because most of us are carrying versions of his material without the language to read it. The friend in chemo, the patient in the locked ward, the accident that rearranged everything, changed your life, the daughter buried, the lover still alive. Most readers cannot name what they're holding when they hold these things. The poem can speak for that. The poem can. And once it has, the reader also has that, if only just for the length of the page. So that is what Mayo means, I think, when he insists the why answers, quote, "The poem has become my prayer, and poetry my only cult," end quote. Poetry here is not piety. It is the practice of finding language adequate to what otherwise remains mute in the body, which is exactly the book's title thesis, muscle memory. The part of us that knows what the mind cannot yet say. There's a second necessity, which has to do with witness. Mayo worked for 15 years inside of a psychiatric ward. American poetry has many books written from the patient's bed. Plath, Sexton, the long lineage of the confessional. And very few books have been written from the staff chair by someone who watched without becoming the spectacle. And to dignify both the patient and the worker without sentimentalizing either is rare, but Mayo does it. Now, if this book is speaking to you already, there are some other poets that are comp poets. They're comp books. I would think, hands down, is Donald Hall's Without. Absolutely. Marie Howe's What the Living Do. 100%. Edward Hirsch, Gabriel. All three of those are speaking this catharsis. And for the body in extremity and the recovery language after injury is something that this is holding on to. So, and also, here are my notes. I almost forgot. But for the direct lineage that Mayo names inside the book itself, Stephen Donne. Mayo borrows a butterfly from a Donne poem for his love poem to Betsy. And Stephen Donne is the closest stylistic cousin. And he has the same willingness to think aloud on the page. So I would also get Stephen Donne's book. So, 3 things that I noticed on the page. And the first is, it seems small, but the language is very deliberate in this book. And so every decision is a very deliberate decision. There's a bilingual undercurrent. Mayo lets French slip into the most charged moments. And I'm going to mispronounce all of these because I met Ben in German class in high school. Jawohl. So I'm going to do my best. But some of the words that he uses are salut, bon mot, ma mère, bercus, à mes voix. The French is footnoted at the back of the book, thankfully, for those of us, which itself is a formal choice. He's asking the reader to cross a small bridge to reach that loaded word. And this works in counterpoint with the clinical English that the book also uses. Tracheostomy, HIPAA, ADT timekeeper, contraband. He's using 2 technical vocabularies. One is carrying tenderness, the other is carrying institutional reality. So there's one of the poems, Meditation on Your Final Moment. Listen to how he does this in the middle of this poem. He's imagining what it might feel like for Fagnoli at the threshold. Maybe all you need is just a gentle, saline solution of generosity, flushing the blood right out of your veins. I mean, why not? It feels right in its medically non-judgmental soulagement. The cool liquid diffusing the fever that was the passionate red of your life's discomfort. Your salut in all meanings as you greet the penultimate experience of life. Soulagement means relief. Salut means both hello and salvation. The body's last greeting in 2 languages at once. The second is in the poem Fugue. And there is a visual prosody in this. This one is one of the most formally daring moments in the collection. The first 2/3 of the poem are conventionally lineated. Mayo is the speaker, a mental health worker on the adolescent locked ward. Then he slides into a dissociative episode and the page enacts it. The white space inside the line becomes the experience. Voices flutter away. A gray, still blur arrives. Even the light, tilting through the window, winks out like a failed bulb, and there is no one here existing in this mute moment. The line itself goes mute. This is a poet who knows what disassociation. It isn't an idea to describe. It is a structural event. And so then a third one, the locked ward is a very legitimate lyric terrain. Contemporary American poetry has plenty of poems about mental illness from the inside, but it has far fewer poems written by the staff. And Mayo writes from the orderly's chair. And he writes from the nursing station. He writes with both authority and tenderness. The patients are not case studies. In one poem, he calls the patient Homer because HIPAA forbids him to name him in the poem. And in another, an unnamed adolescent is addressed as my princess, my forlorn one. And this is the moral seriousness of someone who watched these same units for years and never turned the people into mere material. The tenderness and compassion and the empathy that he is allowing the reader, he's inviting the reader into this space of compassion. And how powerful does that feel? I love this book so much. Now, there's a few things in this book that were a little different, and there's 3 things that really surprised me. First, it's funny. Not all of it, but a book called Muscle Memories of Love and Disaster shouldn't be funny, but yet the March Hare it's a delightful poem. A 6'6", 400-pound patient sidles up to Mayo in a unit and demands he find him a wife so that he can be released that night. And Mayo stands up to him in his full stature and deadpan promises to inquire. And the poem walks away just whistling songs that are relevant. That 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, Hit the Road Jack. The book is much lighter on its feet than the title suggests, and that lightness is part of how harder the poems land. That lightness is a hospitality for the reader. And I saw it when I read it, and that's a gift from a author to the reader. Second, there's a prose poem hiding in the middle, and it's called Swan Song, and it interrupts the lyric architecture with a small fairy tale. A singer in a new city, an aria just reputed to be cursed, an old woman cranking a barrel organ in the midst, and it reads like an Angela Carter fragment in the middle of a Mary Oliver session. The fact that Mayo chose to leave this prose interlude inside the book rather than spinning it off into its own thing is signaling a poet that is unconcerned with genre. He is unconcerned with policing what can be done. And the fable here is doing the work that the lyric can't. And that is one of the crafts, the skillful crafts that Mayo is showing us how it can be done. It's an incredibly well-written book. And with these decisions of which craft to use, how to frame the poem, how it should be written, what form to use, what form not to use, these are all decisions that speaks for the poem. And each poem is its own world. And then you have this universe of a book. It's extremely impressive. But the third interesting thing, the third surprising thing was the closing image. The book does not end on grief. It ends with a poem called The Eagle Outside. And the staff at the window mention an eagle on a branch, and they return to their report. They look back, and the eagle is gone. And the line is delving deep into that blind part of day for a bright fish. And a book like this, about everything we couldn't keep, ends with attention slipping past the thing worth watching, and the thing worth watching surviving that. That is a very hard one closing, and I don't know, maybe I'll come back to it. So, back to comic books. If you've never read Tim Mayo and you want to know the shelf that he belongs in the bookstore, this is what I think. So the most natural comp is Patricia Fargnoli. She's a New Hampshire poet. She was the poet laureate between 2006, I think. She had Then Something or Hollowed. Hollowed is another book. And Mayo names her in the dedication and the acknowledgments. And the book's title itself is a line from his elegy for her. And the two poets share the New England register. The long lyric line, the willingness to make late life and mortality the central subject without flinching and without theatrics. I think she must be read. There's also another book called My Alexandria by Mark Doty, and that's not mentioned in this book. It's a completely separate book, but I think that both of these books have long cadence elegies set in a clinical space, and I think that they both, I don't know, maybe they just refuse to choose between the body's facts and the beauty of the poem. So let me come back to the title phrase, Muscle Memories of Love and Disaster. Mayo's argument is made over the course of 55 poems. That is the body of the actual book. And the archive does not distinguish between the people we loved and the things that broke us. They are filed together in the muscle. The book's quiet triumph is that it doesn't claim to free anyone from that filing system. It simply teaches the reader how to read it. And so I want to close on The Eagle, which is 14 lines. It's the last poem of the book. It's just the bird taking its fish. All right, The Eagle Outside. Hunched on a bare bones limb outside the staff room window, its dark shoulders paler in the midst. I'm going to start over. I'm not even going to erase that. I'm not far enough. It's mist, not midst. Okay. Hunched on the bare bones limb, outside the staff room window, its dark shoulders paler in the mist. We could barely see its white head against the gray vagueness of the air. Morning hadn't burned away all that hovered over the river, and we were talking patience until the night charge changed the subject, pointing to the bird through the pane behind us. We shifted back to his report, and when we turned at the end, it was gone. delving deep into that blind part of day for a bright fish. So, I don't know. I've said I love this book many times. That's why we published it. What I would like you to do is buy this book, not just because I obviously want everyone to buy this book. That's why we publish books. We want to get the books into hands. But because this is an exercise of catharsis, this is an exercise of feeling the muscle memory and the loves and the pain and the grief that we have. And it's giving us a language that we can use. When you have a grief, when you have a love, what does it sound like? What does it look like? This is why poetry is so important, is because just for 1 second, just for a moment in our life, it can speak for us. And that is a gift and it's a blessing. Okay, that is all for today, poetry friends. If you've enjoyed diving into this world of verse with us, please join us next time where we've got more poets to meet, more poems to explore, and more literary adventures to share. So until then, keep reading, keep writing, and keep poetry close to your heart. Thank you for joining POETICS podcast, where we bring poetry to life, one verse at a time.